Welcome to the virtual lunch. Today is Friday, February 12th, and this is virtual lunch number 239. Noah Waisberg, the co-founder and CEO of Kira Systems, is our guest. Noah is the co-author with Dr. Alexander Hudek, his co-founder of AI for Lawyers, How Artificial Intelligence is Adding Value, Amplifying Expertise, and Transforming Careers. This whole month is part of a series of conversations on global connections, thanks to our friends at Nuix.
I started out my legal career as a mergers and acquisitions lawyer at Weil Gotshal in New York. Did some other stuff like private equity and capital markets and corporate governance over my time. I really liked the job, but I was struck by the idea that junior lawyers spent vast amounts of time doing work that they hated, that they weren't that good at, that was highly repetitive, and that their clients didn't really like paying for. That was hugely expensive. It didn't seem like it was going to be sustainable. Then eventually I quit as a lawyer. I really liked the job in a lot of ways, but it wasn't what I felt like doing for the rest of my life. And as I got to be more senior, I realized that I needed to make a move if I was going to make a move. So I just quit and I sat and I thought, and I reflected on whether I should get a job at an existing business because I thought I had a lot to learn, or whether I should start my own business around that theme of just junior corporate lawyers spending too much time doing stuff they shouldn't. But then I started to think about contracts, and I realized that they fit the theory super well. Number one, it's a super high volume task. The 30 to 60% of the cost of an M&A bill can be due diligence. And most of due diligence is contract review. Piece number two is, even at the best firms of the world, people screw up diligence all the time. The third thing was realizing that a lot of the time when people are looking through contracts, they're just looking through them for the same things over and over again. Contract review basically breaks down into two problems. Number one is the pre-signature review. If you're going to sign an NDA or a license agreement, you got to look through and figure out, is this a good agreement for Microsoft or whatever? Situation number two is this one that I think a lot of people don't realize exists, which is companies have contracts. These contracts are signed. You might have 1,000 contracts. If you're Microsoft, you have tens of millions of contracts. There are situations when you actually need to know what they say about something. One situation when that comes up, it turns out that actually these contracts are basically unstructured piles of information. There are hundreds of different data points inside every contract. What happens? Can you do X? What do you have to do? What happens if X occurs? In a more broad sense, companies have tons of latent contract problems, many, many, many more than they realize. But there's situations when they become patent. And our idea was that if we could help people find information in those situations and pull them out, that it would be useful for lawyers. So back in January 2011, I got together with my co-founder, Dr. Alexander Hudek. It was very clear that machine learning was the way to do this to us, and that machine learning was going to be a big thing to Alex, who was sort of already in the machine learning community. So we thought it would take us 4 months to harness the state-of-the-art machine learning and apply it to this problem. We thought it would take us like 6 months to raise money. So we're like, well, let's just build the software and we can raise money later. So we set to work. And after about 6 months, we realized that the software was not going to work the way we thought it would, that the state of the art was not where we thought it was. Then came a painful moment where we're like, okay, we're not going to raise any money on this story. It might take us a decade to get this technology right, and you can't go to a VC with that kind of story. We just kept our heads down and kept working. And after about 2.5 years, we got the software work pretty well. We'd been running a business for 2.5 years and no one had ever paid us a cent. We had zero revenue. So by late 2013, we started to get a bit of revenue. The big transformative moment was that people would use our software and they'd be like, oh, this is good. Can I use it again? And they'd start to pay us. And then we would do okay for the first part of 2014. We sort of officially launched. We'd get some revenue off some deals. But then summer 2014, we released a new feature that allowed anyone to teach Kira themselves via what you'd now call a no-code interface to find something new. So we went from being a 4-person company in the summer of 2014 to 100 people by the summer of 2018, all growing bootstrap, no investment. Majority of the world's large law firms use our tech. We've done pretty well with getting our software adopted, but there's still a long journey to go in terms of getting it more adopted. And just realize that one of the problems is that a lot of lawyers have had over the years just things that make them nervous about AI. Questions and objections, and there were just objections that we kept on hearing. How do you keep stuff confidential? Is it accurate? But we felt like there was even a deeper underlying objection, which is a lot of lawyers, especially in the US, are hourly billing. If you are a fixed fee billing place, it's pretty easy to see how being more efficient helps your bottom line. However, that's not the world we live in the US. One of the things that we thought was really important to explain is even if you're an hourly billing lawyer, this can be okay for you. So there were basically like two big points about the book. Number one, AI is here, whether you like it or not in law. There's just areas of law where people are doing it supported by AI, like your competitors are doing this, and you need to just engage with that reality. And piece number two is this can actually be a good thing for you. Just because AI helps you do individual lawyer tasks more efficiently, it does not necessarily mean that there's going to be less work for lawyers. AI actually drives the opportunity for more legal work to get done, but only if you embrace it. But the basic idea is that people come out of the book with enough knowledge that they understand what AI is, where it's being used in law today, and how that may play out for them as lawyers. One of the things that I love most about it is we got a bunch of other voices to contribute in areas where they were more expert. Some of the people that many would agree are among the most sophisticated people in their particular areas to contribute. Really, machine learning is just a subset of AI. It's just a way of achieving artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence to us, we take a pretty broad definition of which is just any time that you have a artificial system, probably a computer system, that's creating a human-like result. So machine learning is the way that most more sophisticated systems right now do that. Deep learning, which you may hear sometimes, is a subset of machine learning. But equally, a rules-based system is artificial intelligence. People are trying to get a human-like result, and sometimes a rule does the trick there. The intellectual core of this book to me is the second chapter. We just really drill into changes that are happening in the profession, but even things that aren't happening in the profession, things that you can do in the future, that tech can create a world that's better for lawyers, where they have more work. To me, it's just persuading people that not only is this more efficient world that I think you and I both really desire, not something to fear, but actually something that can yield them a lot more work. The access to justice crisis. There's this massive amount, something like 75% of all consumer legal needs go unmet because there's just not a product at a price that people can afford to meet their legal needs. That's a really bad thing, and doing pro bono is great, but it's not the solution of the problem. To me, the solution of the problem is figuring out ways to deliver services in a way that's appealing to customers in product, packaging, price. There's this huge middle class problem that's kind of akin to the access to justice problem. And then even at the top of the sort of spectrum, you could not have more money than Microsoft or Apple. There's still tons of latent legal problems in those businesses that I think they would be very happy to solve if you came to them with a good proposition. AI is one piece, just software in general can be part of it, using the right people, using efficient processes, but really just thinking about it as a product. And so what I think AI can enable is just this world where you can actually sell a lot more legal services. Lawyers need to think about the world in that frame of mind and not in this fearful AI is going to mean that I bill less hours or cause me ethical problems or the like. I think overall, in terms of training of junior lawyers, the relevant skills that you need to be learning as a junior lawyer are just different than the relevant skills you needed to learn as a junior lawyer 20 years ago. You're going to need to be able to process information that comes out of AI systems, and that's going to make you a good, more senior lawyer 20 years from now when you are. So you got to pick that up. I also think the AI is forcing you to do a lot less non-challenging work and a lot more challenging work, and that doing that more challenging work is a better development opportunity. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. This is a long and hard problem, and the only way you solve it is just by making incremental progress.
Noah Waisberg, everybody. Thanks, of course, to Nuix for sponsoring these conversations about global connection.